Anna,
Oh.
what was the biggest? What was the most important sports story of the year?
Okay, ladies first, right? So I'm going to talk about the ladies, and I'm going to talk about the proliferation of women's sports and that much debated and discussed term, the Caitlin Clark effect, which is really an umbrella term for everything that happened in sports because it was so much more far-reaching, right? So the stage that was set, the kindling that was there from years of great college basketball and 25 years of the WNBA was lit aflame when Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese made their way into the sports debate shows, into the zeitgeist. It took off from there. The ratings, record ratings we all know about, not only for the college women's game. By the way, championship game, 4 million more than the men's championship game.
Something you never expect.
Unreal. And record ratings for the WNBA, culminating in an incredible finals, which was finally won, by the way, by the New York Liberty. We have expansion in the WNBA, we have expansion in the NWSL. We have women's hockey. We have the lacrosse league now for women. We have a professional volleyball league for women. So basically this umbrella effect, really, which came from basketball and emanated from women's college basketball to make women's sports appealing to marketers, appealing to companies. People are actually making a financial investment because it's smart. The numbers are there. It makes money.
It does. And I hope it all takes off. But I feel like we've had this pinnacle moment one other time in recent memory. And that was after the 99 Women's World Cup. I mean, those women were rock stars, the 99ers. And those women literally carried the banner forward. And we created the soccer leagues and all this other stuff happened. And then it just sort of fizzled out. So the challenge now is taking the moment and making it much more than a moment. We need to make sure that we capitalize on this momentum and make sure and why the financial backing you're talking about is so significant. So people don't have to go somewhere else to play. But we need to make sure we take this moment and make it a movement.
Now, she's a great player, obviously. Yeah. The things Caitlin Clark has done on the court at Iowa, now in the pros with Indiana, are remarkable. But why? Why the phenomenon that we've seen over the course of the last 2 years, Bill?
You know, it's hard to put my finger on it, but I think you're absolutely right. Caitlin Clark and the debate that ensued was fascinating. I mean, it was months of debate. Not all of it was pretty.
Yeah.
Right.
Not all of it was pretty, and I think it raised some very important issues about the relationship between black women, white women, men's attitudes toward women's sports. I think, to your point, Trey, I think that's what's changing.
Yeah.
I think that is the staying power. That I think that, number one, people are really beginning to appreciate the competition and the athleticism. And we're not comparing it. We're not comparing this to men's sports. We're looking at this entity that's created. Women's sports are really, really in a very good place.
I wanted to say something about Caitlin Clark and her personal evolution, because she was asked by The Athletic in a very infamous exchange about the misogyny and the homophobia and the racism, just the bigotry in general that these women who are now big stars and they're on Instagram and they're easily accessible, that they were experiencing, and that her name was being used in that context. And she initially said one day, well, I can't help what people say. She learned very quickly from that lesson and came right back and has now been saying, you cannot weaponize my name. Yeah. Like, you cannot do that. And then being named the Time Magazine Athlete of the Year, her major point there was elevating black women, was trying to be an ally and trying to use her platform in that regard. And I think that was very important in her personal evolution as a leader.
She's an utterly transformational figure in sports, and they don't come along very often. But Trey, what's your story of the year, the most important story of the year?
Well, obviously, I'm very football-centric for a long time. So I'm obviously fascinated by what the Kansas City Chiefs are doing, trying to become the first team in the Super Bowl era to three-peat. This team knows what they're playing for. They don't care how many points they win by. They don't care who gets 100 receiving yards. Do I have 300? Did we get a win? That's all that mattered. And they have the ultimate outlier in the quarterback in Patrick Mahomes. It has not been his best season statistically, but you talk to people in the league, they say actually he's playing better than people understand. They lost their top 2 wide receivers, and they lost their number 1 running back. Find me another team and another quarterback that would find ways to win without those pieces there.
I mean, think about this team, right? Think about their head coach who was fired 12 years ago in Philadelphia, the frustration.
We are never going to win with Andy was the phrase.
Right.
Think about Patrick Mahomes, passed over by several teams, obviously, in the draft. When you think about the spirit, the soul of this team, Bill, what comes to mind?
Just doing whatever it takes to win, just the timeless. I mean, I think Mahomes, in that respect, has been, I don't like to make these the greatest of what, but I think that his sense of timing and doing what it takes to win.
They are winners, okay? They know they won that Super Bowl last year in overtime.
Right.
All right, they took the lead on the final play of the game for the first time in Super Bowl history. The lead changed hands on the final play of the game. They have won 7 games this season by 7 points or fewer. You know what that says? They don't beat themselves. And it says they know how to win. They will win by any means necessary. And I think the secret sauce there is the relationship between Reed and Mahomes. You don't see Patrick Mahomes going off with his buddies and missing camp on a trip, right? Like, that doesn't happen. They're in lockstep. Patrick Mahomes has said he knows what plays are coming in before they come in. And that's repetition, and that is just good old-fashioned practice, and everyone pulling in the same direction and being on the same page.
It's championship DNA is what it is.
Yeah,
15 straight wins in one-possession games, including the postseason. 2 better than the record set by the Patriots. Just a couple.
Yeah, and by the way, Mahomes statistically is the best quarterback in history in those close games.
Oh, it's not even a debate. I have some numbers here for you. I'd love to hear. A couple of quick nuggets here. This is why I believe it. First of all, as a quarterback in the postseason, he's 15-3. The only players that have beaten him, Tom Brady twice, he's now calling games, and Joe Burrow of the Bengals, they won't be making the postseason. But it gets even better than that. Mahomes is 19-14 in games in which the Chiefs have been down by 10 or more points. Nobody else has a winning percentage better than .412. Hold on. He's 19-13 when he falls behind in the fourth quarter. No other quarterback is even close to 500. And let's say your defense is having a bad day, right? You give up 24 or more points. When the Chiefs give up 24 or more points, their record with Patrick Mahomes as a starter is 34-20.
I do want to get to, before we go any further on the Chiefs, your story of the year. What is your story of the year?
In terms of, so I spent the summer in Paris, most of the summer in Paris. The performance of the women in the Olympics, on the mat with Simone Biles, in the pool with Ledecky. These women were just, I mean, what they did was amazing.
And it was stalwarts, and it was newcomers, and
they carried the team.
Yeah,
they carried the team.
Yeah, I mean, just to perform one after the other were just amazing. I was just so impressed. And they came with a mission. And that was the thing. They came with a mission. They were aware of each other. So I think that was it wasn't a moment, it was just a performance. The performance of the women at the Paris Olympics that's my story.
And the success of the Olympics themselves after some down cycles was one of the big stories in itself.
And some consternation about Caitlin Clark not being on the team.
Sure.
Yeah.
But how do you make the Olympics relevant to a young audience? What do? Okay, you, NBC, go out and you get Snoop Dogg. And they said, we are going to dive into pop culture here. Yeah. And so Beyonce produces and does the Open for the Olympics. Taylor Swift is involved. You know, you got Serena in the crowd. You got Tom Brady in the crowd. They partnered with LVMH and did essentially this incredible fashion show opening party. They owned Instagram. You couldn't get away from the Olympics.
Coubertin would have been spitting in his grave seeing the commercial for Louis Vuitton trunk in the opening ceremony.
But it was unbelievable what they did.
Adapt or die. Adapt or die.
How much? And did that set the stage for LA? It's going to be really interesting to see if someone like a Simone Biles does extend, which would be unbelievable, historic. Will she extend her career to be able to compete in LA?